Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Devin Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy, and this is the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast in the entire known universe, the galaxy even. I am joined, as per usual.
Chloe, cut that out.
I'm getting verklempt up here. Joined as per usual by...
real Yiddish.
Yeah, that's right. My brother, my partner, my co-host, and a dude who I appreciate all the time, but definitively appreciate him even more over the course of these last 2 weeks, my brother, Jeremy Techteal. And for those of you who are not joining us on an audio-visual platform and you can't see our beautiful faces, we have a special guest today, the pride of Brighton High School, Conner Reynolds, Driveline hitting trainer.
Hello, how are we doing today?
In so much as I sometimes use this show as like the bully pulpit for me to get things off my chest. Two things, briefly. One, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I'm not going to like pan to camera and give you the emotional I love you thing like I did for Mother's Day, because I don't think you guys want that as a dad. I don't want that. But certainly want to recognize like the importance of dads in youth baseball. Like I think you could probably make the argument that youth baseball as a whole just is like runs on this machine of like overly motivated dads. And I raised my hand. I am an overly motivated dad. I get it. And certainly you also have stepdads and grandpas and uncles and mothers and siblings that are also like performing that role. And I, for me, like being a dad is the best job I've ever had. It's the most challenging job I've ever had. It's also the one that's the most rewarding. And man, it's just, I don't know. I think for people out there that are on the front lines and aren't like doing performative parenting, like parenting for Instagram, which is, boy, if there is one thing that grinds my gears, my wife knows what I'm talking about. That drives me nuts. I think the other thing about just like people who are doing it because you either want to execute the type of parenting that you received as a child, or you do the other thing that's a little bit more tricky to navigate, which is the parenting you received as a child is not necessarily the type of parent that you want to become, and you have to like resolve that stuff. It takes a lot of commitment, a lot of effort. You got to burn a lot of calories. So for the dads out there that are like putting in the work, and the moms and the uncles and the siblings and the grandparents that are doing that, man, we just couldn't do this thing without you. I was very fortunate to have a dad and a stepdad and a grandpa and an uncle and my mom. It took a proverbial village to actually get me here and not have me drive my car off the side of a road.
Or motorcycle.
Or a motorcycle.
Did you get a good present for Father's Day outside of a 700 OBP?
700 OBP was nice. The stand-up double was nice. No, which leads into, you actually set me up for the next thing. I had the extreme privilege of being able to coach our 18U team over the course of this last like weekend plus. So we didn't really do like a conventional Father's Day because, I was up at 5:30 on Sunday to like make sure my lineup was put together and then get Danny out the door, and then get myself out to my game. But, coaching the 18s, man, I think I texted you, we texted either after our first game or after our second game. And I was like, man, I forgot how much I miss this. I forgot how much flippin' fun it is to coach kids. It's just the best, man. Like trying to figure out that puzzle of like, you see a kid in their current version of themselves and you see this potential version of like how they could do something better, and trying to solve that. Like, how do I put in the right puzzle piece here to like help them connect the dots? It's the most challenging thing, but it's also the most rewarding. Like it's just the absolute best part of it. And in our 18U team, man, like there's a bunch of great kids and great ball players on that group. And it was a real joy to be able to have them over the course of the weekend. Played 500 ball and we're in every single game that we had. Were it not for a couple points of run differential, we would have been in the championship bracket on a Sunday with a chance to play some meaningful games. A couple of them on Sunday didn't have that. So we had just like the fourth game consolation on Sunday, and we were, it was 3-1, bottom 7, 2 on, 2 out with my number 3 most dangerous hitter at the plate. Like I can't ask for anything else. Like I really can't. And because I knew I was only going to have them for like that weekend, I don't have enough book of business on those kids to like give them a bunch of like technical instruction because I'm just there for the weekend to make sure that I can kind of coach them in Coach Sandy's absence. I did, however, leave them with some Shakespeare on Sunday.
Oh, sure, they love that.
Yeah, because who doesn't want to talk to a bunch of 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids about Shakespeare?
Do they even know who Shakespeare is?
A couple of them did. Okay. A couple of them did. So,
one of our 13U kids said that his most famous work was it Julio and
Romiet?
Yeah, Julio and Romiet.
Yeah. So yeah,
I think he actually said Julio, not Julio.
Yeah, it was Julio. So I did throw the old the Hamlet quote. Lord, we know what we are, yet we know not what we may be. And it's like, it's just Weathers 101, man. It is Casey Weathers 101. Like, you just don't know the future version of yourself, that what you could become if you just harness the opportunity to try to get there and just flip and commit. And that was, that was what I tried to close it out with them on the 18s on Sunday, because, I think the front part of their season, through no fault of Coach Sandy, to be very, very clear, I think they're a team that's still trying to figure out who they are. Mm-hmm. And I think we had a moment when I first had them on Wednesday where it was just like, well, we're kind of down on this game, so like we're gonna just lose. And they just, and I think going into Thursday's game, I was just like, take the flip and stink off. We're a competitive baseball team. Let's play that way. And then had a lead, lost it, took it back, top six, closed it out, bottom six, and it was electric. It was just absolutely electric, and man, I missed it because I haven't had a team of my own for 2 years, like not since I coached, Danny's Little League All-Star team and that team in majors that year. So it was great to be able to do that. They were a really, really good group of kids, and they are competitive as heck, and I expect that they are going to continue to get better in that regard, whether or not they internalize my message, my Shakespearean message to them. Brighton High School, Conner Reynolds.
Yes, sir.
Let's just start, like, the preamble to this is like, how do you land here? But I think the thing that I am like very curious about when I look at your stuff and it's like, hey, like all-state shortstop, like, and seeing your high school coach, like, yeah, like it's really cool to see a kid like, build the stuff to be like a D1 athlete. What's like the beginning part of baseball for you? Like rec ball, travel ball, what does that look like?
Yeah, very thankful for my dad, speaking on Father's Day.
Right.
He pretty much like did everything. He coached all of my teams. He, oversaw everything and made sure that it was done in the way that he wanted it done, rather than not what the status quo or what everyone else has been doing. And so I played rec ball until I was like 12. Like, I just played in we had the Aurora like youth league. I just did that. I didn't even know that, travel ball was a thing. I didn't know any about that.
Yeah.
I just knew like I enjoyed playing. I was pretty good, but like there were times where like parents would come up to my dad and like not know that I was his child, because they couldn't tell from the way that practices were run. They couldn't tell that I was his kid. Yeah. They just thought that I was just another kid out there. And so they thought that he was just like giving me rides and stuff. And so, like, growing up like that, and then going to the first travel ball team I played on, he wasn't a coach at all either.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, it was really good to like kind of like be able to get away from that. But like, he was always there for me, like coming home from practices, like struggling and whatnot. Like, he was there for me. And then he saw how the 1 year went. It was very daddy ball. All of a sudden we would be looking and stats would be changed that you're looking at, you're like, if those were the real stats, like, there's no way we're losing these games, yet
Sure.
We're losing by a good amount. And then we actually got an invitation from another team to go and play in Cooperstown. Mm-hmm. And the team that I was on, they weren't going. And it was funny. It was actually a team from Brighton, because I didn't live in Brighton yet. A team from Brighton we were playing against came over. We lost like 18-1. I pitched. I had scored the 1 run. I made like 2 diving catches. Like, threw a kid out at home. Like, I played really well. Team just wasn't like at that point yet. And so after the game, the coach from Brighton came over and was like, hey, we're going to Cooperstown. we need a few extra guys. Like, would you want to go? And so we went up, we asked our coach, and we're like, hey, like, this is an opportunity. We're not going. Can we go? He said that he would remove us off the roster if we left. And so never got to play in Cooperstown or anything like that. And after that 1 year, my dad was like, all right, I'm running the show from here on out. And so next couple of years, did that, moved to Brighton. And then he kind of like, again, hands off a little bit. And then I actually came back, started playing with the guys I would have played with if I went to Cooperstown.
Sure.
So that was like kind of a cool full circle. Got into Brighton, and then I was a year older than my grade was. And so I was having to play up a little bit. So when 8th grade came, all the guys I was playing with, they were all in high school playing their freshman year.
Sure.
So I was kind of out. I actually ended up getting an arm injury. And so that kind of worked out to where I was able to almost take like a gap year off of that. And so I just rehabbed. That summer ball came around. I just skipped spring essentially, and then got played with the high school guys throughout that summer. Went out, and then around sophomore year, I was on varsity as a freshman. Didn't start off that way, but ended up batting like, I think it was like 750 or something like that on JV. So
Pretty decent. Pretty
kind of like
decent.
had to bring me up a little bit, and so I was able to letter my freshman year. We played pretty well. A guy by the name of like Bobby Dahlbeck we played against. We ended up losing to him 2-1 in state, and so that was freshman year. Sophomore year came, I became a starter. Was playing shortstop, and then kind of for the next few years, I was able to have some decent years. I was able to be a player of the year of the conference my senior year, different things like that. Committed to a Division I, Northern Colorado. I think it was I got an offer my sophomore year, committed my senior year, and then got there. Was not necessarily the happiest with like looking around. A few different coaching changes were made, different things like that. And so decided to transfer after my first semester, went to Garden City Community College. Loved it there. We ended up being like 1 win away from going to the World Series. So
Nice.
that was like a really cool environment, and just it was what I needed. Originally, I thought D1 was like where I needed to go, and then getting to the Division I level. And I mean, I would say that there's different Division I's. Like there's definitely your mid majors, there's your not mid majors, and then there's your Power Fives. We were not a mid major. It was not even close. And so that was kind of like a reality check of understanding like, okay, I enjoyed my time way better at a community college, at JUCO.
Yeah.
And then during high school, I heard JUCOs, and I was like, oh, those are for the guys that can't make it. Those are for the guys that suck. I'm going D1. And then I get to D1, and all the good guys are from junior colleges. Yeah. I'm like, okay. And then I go to junior college, and I'm like, wait, there are D1 bounce backs. There's this, there's that. And it's just like whole different world. So it was just something that I didn't really understand. And then being able to go through that was really fun. After that, I ended up, so I was a shortstop all throughout high school, shortstop my first year of college. And then I was about like 210 going in, finishing my freshman year. Slimmed down throughout the summer, got down to 200. I was working at a golf course. So just like every day outside, moving and stuff and doing whatnot. So got down to about 200, felt like I was playing my best ball. Summer ball, was killing it, hitting bombs, running fast, doing all the things that I was like supposed to. Also, freshman year, I had a pretty good year, batted 300, 10 bombs, 10 stolen bags. Didn't do too bad in the field that short. So, like, it wasn't like I was coming off of a bad year, but, like, I knew, like, hey, I hit this summer. I cut some weight. Like, my sophomore year is going to go crazy, right? So, get a sophomore year, show up, and coach goes, hey, we brought in some freshman middle infielders. We're going to move you to the outfield. So I was like, oh, change of plans. Wasn't expecting that. And then ended up blowing out my hamstring in the outfield. Like first week was just doing base running, and then just blew it out trying to go first to third. So then they moved me over to first base, and I was like, can do this. I'm used to it. I've played infield. And then they told me they wanted to try and get to 250 pounds. And they wanted me to get MLB legs. So we were able to get to 230. We tried, and then we had a pretty good sophomore year. Batted about 300, hit 17 home runs that year. Was I think all conference DH or something like that. So I had a pretty good year. Ended up playing in Canada for summer ball with the Regina Red Sox in the Wimble League, and then had 1 year where right at the end of the summer, I actually got into a collision playing first base. I bunt up the third base line, pitcher grabs it, throws it over. I tried to reach around the runner, blew out my arm. So completely tore the UCL, dislocated the elbow, completely tore the forearm. So that happened, and then went through, didn't realize that had happened. So we just popped it back in place.
Keep playing.
Flew home.
Sure.
Then the school wanted me to get an x-ray. We get an x-ray, get an MRI. Find out it's pretty jacked
Shredded.
up. And so went through, I came back after 2 months. I was trying to like grit through it. Had a lot of not agreeing with the coach through a lot of stuff to a point where I actually had like a notes app list of like different things that like strategically like, hey, in this situation, I did not agree whatsoever with this, and here's why, and this is what I would have done, and all of that. And so we get down to the end of the year. I played in like maybe I think it was 2 games past the medical red shirt where I would be able to medical red. And maybe 15 of those appearances were pinch hits in the last 2 innings with 8-run difference.
So just burned it. Yeah.
And so we get done, and he slides the thing over and he's like, all right, like, ready for next year. Can't wait, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. And he thought I was trying to transfer somewhere. I was just like, I'm done. Like, not you, but like this last few years has just made it to where I don't want to play anymore. Like, this is just not fun. And, if you can be a college coach, what could I be? Like, I feel like I could be something. And
so is that basically the jumping off point of like the gift and the curse, right?
Yes.
Like you did meaningful disruption or damage to my career, but I can do this thing.
Yeah. That was the point. And then also, like, I hated school. Like, hated school. Like, I think it was I had to take 2 or 3 classes every winter and summer just to be eligible.
Sure.
Like, it was just, I hated school. I hated being around it. And so I was like, all right, I'm not having fun playing where I'm at. And at the time, for all the athletes, I was just talking to one of the athletes earlier, there was not a transfer portal. Like, it was hey, you have to sit out a year if you're trying to go like the same division or up a division or this and that. I was already at the D2 spot, and I was like, I'm not trying to, like, nothing against D3s, but like I wasn't trying to drop down, go to a new school. It was going to be my 4th year with 4 schools. I'm done with that. I don't want to deal with school. And so came back. And then a facility that I was training at, I just reached out and I was like, hey, like, anything that I could do, let me know. So I got hired on as a janitor, and I started just like cleaning toilets, mowing the lawn out front, pulling weeds. And then during the pro hiring season, my first year there, I got hired in the summer, and then that pro off season, I think it was 6 of our guys ended up getting hired. So I went from literally being a janitor to running the hitting department at the facility in like a 5-month swing. So that was a lot of fun, had a good time. Facility there ended up getting shut down. And so I started doing like home remodeling at the time, and I was running a travel ball team. So I was like running it, travel ball, the schedule for travel, hotel reservations, like tournaments, everything, practice, fields. I was doing all of that. I was like 23 at the time, and like I really enjoyed it. Like, it was fun. Like, I had my Google spreadsheets and everything was nice and whatnot. And so we kept track of all of our practices, player development. Like, I had it all, put together, sorted out. And so going through, and then COVID ended up hitting right around, I think I was like 24, 25-ish. That's when like COVID hit. And so I had my team, and it was kind of like in a struggle of like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Didn't even have a facility. And so I ended up doing lessons out of a 30-foot cage at my house. I was doing lessons out of that. And then I was also doing lessons out of a back of a pizza joint that we would like park in the back. There were stairs going down, and there was just like one cage just in like the most random closet, what felt like space. And this worked. This is what we had to do during COVID.
Can you imagine how many just like random cages there are sprinkled throughout this country? Pizza joint, like they're everywhere. Everybody's got a little spot that's kind of secreted away, you know.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane, and it like saved me, because like otherwise, like none of my guys, we couldn't do anything. Colorado was like a pretty strict space for what everything was going down with. So we didn't really have anything. And so being able to go to those spaces, I ended up having like disband my team because the organization we were with didn't want to like notice that COVID was going on. And so they were like, everything's going to ruin like as it was going to. And it's like, no, it's not. And I had like half of my team was already signed up. The other half wasn't. So the part that was signed up, they were in it. And then the other half that weren't signed up, they're like, hey, we're out. And it's like, I don't blame them. But then the other half of the families, they were stuck. And so I ended up having to like quit. So that way they could then get their money like released back to them, because rather than it being COVID's fault, it's, hey, the coach quit. So like little stuff like that kind of had to like deal with. And then COVID came back and ended up doing stuff at a different facility that brought me on, and then they ended up falling out and not working out. And so then another facility picked me up, and so I've like bounced around to like 4 or 5 different facilities, all pretty much just looking to do the same thing. I've kind of called myself a mini Walmart, or a Walmart Driveline, a little mini version of itself.
Sure.
I mean, I've made my own bat speed bats with lead tape and quarters. I have a long bat that I made from fungos, and like a bunch of just different stuff that I've seen, happen and just make it work. We had to hit tracks, blast motions, and different stuff like that. We use track. I've actually gone through and years ago been on the phone with Jeremy here going over track and stuff like that. And so like I've been immersed in a lot of the stuff what's been going on here. I've known JP. I've seen Tanner and Max at and I saw you at ABCA. And so like I've had the relationship and been blessed enough to be able to know some of what's going on. And so that kind of led to a spot where I was able to thankfully apply for the internship, get the internship, and here we are.
You're here.
Long story short.
So when you first start working with kids, how much of kind of like, whether you're just doing lessons or team stuff, how much of that is informed by like, this is the stuff I feel is like reasonably effective for me or enjoyable at the very least? And how much of that is, I know that this coach had me do this thing and I fundamentally disagree, so I have to create something that's like not that.
Yeah, I would say a majority of it is like I truly enjoy like what we do and how we go about it. I would say some of it is in the back of my mind of like, I remember a coach making me do this, or I remember like this being like a have to. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job of being able to like separate out like what is actually important, even if I didn't want to do it or if I didn't like doing it, like understanding, is there value in it? If there is value, then like obviously we roll with it. And then also understanding like, if, just because we've done it in the past or I've done it doesn't mean we have to do it in the future.
That one is tricky.
It is. Because then you almost, there's that idea of like, well, I did it, and so like they must do it.
Yep.
Why? No.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
Yeah, I saw this morning. There's a video of Luis Arias. It's Arias, right? Yeah. Arias. Hitting a ball on a tee, and like it's just like way in on him. Swing looks really bad. And it's kind of, put out there as like, well, if you want to be this guy, right? Like that's the way that this stuff is sold on social media. It's like, if you want to be that guy, you have to do that thing. And it's funny when it's just like the thing that guy is good at is bat to ball. Don't have to worry about like the cognitive part of bat to ball when the ball is not moving on a flippin' tee.
Weird.
And I understand it, right? I understand the idea in isolation that like maybe the way to start patterning that movement and groove it is to kind of take that variable out of the equation. But like once you kind of decide that, you're already in this really gray area of like, maybe we're only working on this in isolation, right? Why would I think that this particular pattern or solution or whatever has any ability to transfer when I take that thing away?
Right.
But Luis Arias does it. Mike Trout does it. I mean, we've all seen the videos of Mike Trout's tee work. I've seen him talking to Mark DeRosa or whoever it is, and it's like, man, it's really tough, because if you get out there and publicly go like, this is eyewash, this is bad, you are going to get a flood of people that are like, so you know more than Mike Trout? And like, no, man, I'm not. I'd never, ever would say that. But the problem is that the conclusion goes, you do this thing and you can get like that guy. We draw a real direct line. And it's like, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah. No, it's
Not if
one
you
of
don't look like Mike Trout.
Yeah, and like have like a 25-inch neck.
Matt Isle, he put out a thing, I think it was a couple weeks ago, where it was I feel so bad because I don't know her name, but it was like a very famous like softball player, like very famous. And he put out a video of her hitting. It was just like, hey, anybody have any suggestions? Really like struggling.
Oh, sure.
And the amount of people that are coming out of the woodwork with like, oh, this, and this, and he's actually done the same thing
With Trout.
Times. He did with
for
Trout. Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's the same exact thing. And it's one of those where it's just like, it's so frustrating. And I think, I don't know where this podcast stands with it, but like A-Rod, in my opinion, does it the most. And it frustrates me so much where like the lack of understanding of real versus feel, or the just wanting
Sure.
to draw a direct line straight to these things. And it's like, there's so many other things that are involved in that. There's so many other aspects of the training, or so many different things that are going on. It's not just this to this. And there's enough people that are commenting and are voices in this game that when the few times kids actually will watch a baseball game,
That's what they hear.
that's what they're listening to, is like guys saying this or that. And I think it hurts the game more than anything when you go to the source of baseball and you're watching the best players, and you're watching like the former best players, and they're speaking about the game in this form or this fashion. That hurts the game. And then you have the guys that think it's directly correlated. It's just, well, because he hits off of a tee and it's like that's how he does that, or this or that. And it's just like, that's not how it goes. That's not how it is. And it's very frustrating. It makes our jobs a little bit more difficult. But then that's the fun part, because I don't know, for me, I like that challenge of trying to make it to where I can get different people of different perspectives to then understand the same thing. That's what I really enjoy about it.
Well, and I think in part of that process, you're going to weed out the people who inherently are either like not flexible enough and can kind of hold like two different ideas of equal value simultaneously, or they just don't want to contribute, right? And it's just, and this is the conversation that we had probably a couple weeks ago walking in the hallways. I was like, we have to save this for the pod. Like there are just people in our space on the hitting side who everything that they do is kind of like couched in either mystery, right? Where like I, Guru, am the only person that can kind of validate the quality of a swing. And I'm not going to validate it in a way that is like where there's like technical transparency, right? Tanner Stokey has this great video that he worked on with Taiki and Bally Sports has put out about Mike Trout, right? And it's all about, what are the things that we can quantify? The undisputable stuff that we understand about what he does is good. That's one way to do it. The way that a lot of other guys do it is like, we all know who I'm talking about. It's launch quickness.
If you don't understand it, you won't know it.
Correct.
If you don't see it, you won't know it.
Correct.
And it's like, how are other people supposed to be able to understand it unless they go to you, which that's the marketing.
It's the whole point. Yes.
And I have all the power. I have all the power. This is going to be a real deep cut, and I don't expect either one of you guys to catch this reference, but there was this movie in the 80s called Remo Williams, The Adventures of Remo Williams. In it, there's this guy whose name becomes Remo Williams that gets like taught how to walk on water by like this mystical, very inscrutable. It's like, certainly like a pantomime of someone of Asian heritage or whatever, played by a white guy. So of course, and when I think about some of those guys who
41% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's not a great movie. It's not a great movie, but much like the other movie recommendation I've made on this podcast, Megaforce, it's so bad it's really enjoyable, But when I think about those guys, everything is just kind of is is couched in this air of mystery where I am the sole arbiter of whether or not you've done the thing, make the move, whatever it is correctly or not. The reason you hold that position is because I have power, right? Now I am the sole judge jury of whether you did the thing or not. And if you do the thing, now I can take credit for it. If you didn't do the thing, however, well, that's your goddamn fault. You didn't do the thing that I told you to. And it's like, it all just, we've spent so much time on here talking about systems. Like, we talk about systems all the time. We talk about systems of player development. We talk systems of team management. We talk about systems of in-game coaching, like making an active choice to be positive in the way that you engage with kids, right? We talk about making an active choice in the way that you coach them, largely through constraints, external cues, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of this stuff is the exact opposite. And it's like, yeah, your system is... I am the one that holds all the power. I am the one that is, again, I am the arbiter. And anything else is like, well, if it suits me, I will say that you did the thing. You made the move. And if not, then I just cast you aside. Well, you just can't see it. I can't see it. And like, maybe that's true. Maybe you are, the esteemed, 200-year-old very inscrutable man who knows these inner secrets of the universe or whatever, right? You could also just tell me about the thing that we can quantifiably agree on. Bat speed, attack angle, exit velocity.
There is one thing that this figure has mentioned that you can not quantify, but apparently it's the missing frames.
Oh, sure.
The missing frames.
Sure.
That's why you can't quantify any of this, is because they're missing.
Right.
You can't see them.
Right.
They're not real.
See, but the thing is that, like, well, where am I? Over there, in that R&D cage, where we have like 16 Edgertronic cameras.
Missing frames. That's not real.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And so it's funny, like the reason why I asked about kind of like what you felt reasonably confident about and then what you wanted to try to learn to get kids to where you want them to go is I think that ultimately starts with you got to decide what's good, like you have to decide internally what is my North Star, right? Is it one thing? Is it three things? Like I think our North Star is like on hitting, it's three things. You have to move the bat fast. You have to hit the ball reasonably flush. And the goal is to develop the output of those two things, which is exit velocity. Right? Like that's the thing. And I guess the third thing, to be really clear, is the bat speed and exit velocity kind of thing is wrapped up in a smash, is the decision about whether you want to swing or not. Like with 18U this weekend, over and over and over, I was just like, be clear. Like you have to be clear up here. Because the more that you are inhibited in that regard, the more difficult it is for you to make a swing decision on time. Because if you make a swing decision late, it doesn't matter. Like it literally doesn't matter. Like we had a situation at one point where I had a kid that was hitting in the 4, big strong kid, can hit balls really hard, can do damage, and we had 1 down, 2 on, my 4-hitter up, and he rolled over, hit a ground ball, oppo to the second baseman. We get back to the dugout, and I don't know nothing from nothing. Like, you tell me. And I was like, "What? Did you get a good pitch to swing at?" And he was like, "Yeah." It was like, "So, like, why do you think you rolled over?" It's like, "Well, it looked like there was just like a lot of, I think I could shoot it over that, that gap." And this is the Shakespeare thing, right? You know yourself, but sometimes you don't even know yourself. Because if you're 18 and you're like 6'3", 220, in a 2-1 count, or a 2-0 count, or a 3-0 count, why on earth are we predicating our approach on trying to not drive the ball hard on the pull side? And he was like, well, I thought I was going to be able to find that gap there. I was like, yeah, but there's like a pretty big gap on the pull side too. Like, why are we discriminating against pull side gap shots? Why would we do that? But the other thing that I saw this whole weekend was a lot of terrible swings in the on deck. A lot of like, A-Rod would be very proud type of swings.
To be clear, we're anti-A-Rod in this podcast, though.
100,000%.
I figured I didn't want to be a first-time guest making like, hey, this is where we stand.
I think of like the guys that we disagree the most vehemently with. John Smoltz.
I was going to say, Smoltz is clearly number one.
Yeah.
You're number one.
Yeah, John. A-Rod, I would say, is number two, because he's so public about it, and I think that's exactly why you're right in terms of like the damage that this does to the game. And like, we had Jason Ochart on the podcast a while ago, and we got into this conversation about like the swing down thing. And Och's point, which I think I've reiterated before, but if you're a new listener and we've picked up a lot of those lately, I will do it again. Och's point is like he thinks that the reason that like stay on top thing came about is because if what you see for the overwhelming majority of your training is like 45-mile-an-hour cupcakes, right, that are going to have an excessive amount of descent angle because they're not thrown very hard, well, how do you hit the ball flush? You exaggerate your attack angle. Is that what competition looks like? No. So swing down, stay on top, short to it, long through it, etc., is all like a way to kind of like hack your brain to actually try to stay on 90-mile-an-hour fastball that's backspun really effectively. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Like I can kind of connect the dots there, right? But when A-Rod goes, that like the swing path is like down here, and like backspin is just going to take it off there. Like I've seen him do that on a broadcast. It's not just, hey, you said a dumb thing, and like the smart people are going to cast aspersions at you. You said a dumb thing, and it's like you're polluting in the ocean with oil. This is like an oil spill. Because it goes out there and it affects other people, and then they have bad swings, and then they have bad outcomes, and they can't figure it out.
But A-Rod said it.
And he said it on a broadcast. He said he saw it on a broadcast.
Yes, 100,000%.
Not one he was playing in, because
correct.
You didn't see it a whole lot during his playing career.
Correct. No, this was when Daniel Murphy was going absolutely berserk against the Dodgers in like an NLCS in like 15 or 16 or something like that. Yes. And I have a GIF of this saved on my computer somewhere, because A-Rod is like, he's trying to explain it to Frank Thomas and Pete Rose and a couple of other guys that like know a thing or two about hitting.
I was just gonna say that.
Absent whatever, Frank sells supplements of a bikini area variety, and Pete has his own issues.
I was gonna say that we're starting with Frank's issues.
Well, try to smooth the path out. But it's just the best because like A-Rod is demoing a swing that he didn't take once.
No.
He didn't take once. No. And the look on the faces of Frank Thomas and Pete Rose when he's showing that it's the best. It's the absolute best. Because those are two guys who are like, yeah, that ain't it. But like, it's on a broadcast. What are they going to say?
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. But I think again that like all of this kind of comes back on, you got to decide what's your North Star. Yep. Like you have to. So take me back. First youth teams you're working with.
Yep. So
what's the North Star?
Yeah, North Star. So first team that I ever ended up coaching, if we remember, I started off as a janitor. Yeah. And so there was a 12U team.
All the best ones start as janitors.
Oh yeah. You got was it Goodwill Hunting or whatever? Yeah. Where the dude is a janitor and solves the problem.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd compare yourself to that, but yeah.
Well, for this team, that's what I was. me and my coach. So we ended up going through halfway through the season. This 12U team hasn't won a game all year. The coaches quit, and so all of a sudden the guys at the facility come up to me and my buddy who we were just running the front desk that day, and they're like, "Hey, do you guys want to coach?"
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, this is how much you guys will get paid." Yeah, all right. When's the first practice? So we show up, and like the first practice we go to, we're just in this like open field, and we're like, all right, like, let's get some ground balls in, let's get some fly balls. And so we're going through, and we just like realize like these kids are like allergic to the ball. Like it's just ejecto mitts everywhere. Sure. Like I don't think one kid even knew what hand he was. Like it was like that. And so we're going through, and we're like, all right, we get done with practice. We get done with like the fielding portion of practice, and then it's like, all right, like let's get some base running in there. Well, we're going through and we're just, running down to first, running down to second. We get through, we get done to second. It's like, all right, let's do a race. Like, get half the guys on second, half the guys at home. Let's go
Yes.
through, let's race.
Yes.
And then we go through, we're doing that. And one kid is just like almost walking. And he's a larger kid, but it's just like almost like just like walking. It's like, hey, like, we got to go. We got to go. And we finally like stop and we're just like, what is going on? And he just looks at us, just, don't have my inhaler. What are you talking about? He's like, left at school. And he is just like, starts like getting like hyperventilation. And it's like, where's your parents? We don't even know who this kid's parents are right now. This is our first practice. So
Welcome to youth baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So then we like go through and we find mom and she's like, he's all right. Like, he'll figure it out. So we're just sitting there like, what the heck is going on? So, like, that was our first practice. And then we ended up like implementing just like team baseball. Like, that was like the big thing is like team baseball. They were absolutely terrified of getting hit by the ball. So anytime a ball semi got near them in the batter's box, they're diving out of the way. We implemented, hey, if you move your feet, unless it's coming out of your head, I had to throw that caveat in.
Yeah.
But if you move your feet, you're having a run. So all of a sudden, like, we start wearing pitches. Well, then we're getting base runners on, but now everyone's scared to steal. Everyone's scared to get out now. So then it was like, hey, like, if you're on the same bag for more than like 4 pitches, we're like replacing you or something like that.
And what age was this?
12.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, 3 pitches, maybe 2.
Yeah, it's like, hey, just go. So then we got rid of the fear of getting. Originally, it was the fear of the ball. And then we got rid of the fear of the ball. Then we got rid of the fear of being out or being unsuccessful. And then it was just like slowly peeling back those layers. So I would say our North Star was removing fear and finding fun. Like, that was the big thing. Is like, this isn't scary. This may sometimes not be the most fun, but it's not scary. Once we got understood, like, hey, this isn't scary anymore, it's like, all right, let's show you guys how we can have fun. And then we ended up finally like winning one game, and like it was like we won the Super Bowl. Like, we won the Super Bowl, we won the World Series, like the everything, NBA Finals, like everybody was just celebrating. We won one game, and it was like, I think in our last tournament, and ended up like, none of the kids, I don't think, like, even played like 3 years later or anything like that. But like for them to go from like not even winning a game to like multiple kids like quit, to then all of a sudden like them actually like having fun, and we have parents saying like, hey, like, where they're actually like learning baseball when before they just like would go to practice. So like that was like team one. It was interesting. It was a small struggle, and it was like really good to like understand like the spectrum of players. Like here, at Driveline, we have some very, very good players that come in and train here, but then also like understanding like what the spectrum of possibility is for some players, and kind of how to understand how to pull the most out of each player. So that way their experience, they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's a good North Star.
Thank you. Yeah. It was interesting. It was interesting.
But like, I mean, I think it does like, to a degree kind of proves the point that like, absent an adult in the equation that can give them that context, that like this thing doesn't, like, competition doesn't need to be scary. No. You can be highly invested and highly motivated to succeed, but like, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah. Like, what's the worst that can happen? But absent an adult giving them context, they're like left to their own devices, terrified.
Oh my word.
Terrified.
Petrified.
Yeah. Yeah. Petrified is good because you're not able to move. Right? Yeah, 100%. 100%. So doing lessons.
Yep.
Take me back to like Conner Reynolds of 4 years ago.
Basement of the pizza joint.
Yeah, basement of the pizza joint. I presume that the pizza joint didn't have like no force plates in the floor, no hit tracks,
no tech. So yeah. When we started rocking that out right around COVID, I was doing half my lessons at this pizza joint, half of my lessons at my barn. It was about 50-minute drive in between the two. So I was driving down about 45 minutes to the facility every single time. And that's where like a majority of my players were at. And so rather than having them drive all the way up, I was like, hey, I'm going to come down to you. But I knew like, hey, I got to get video on these guys, and I have to make it to where, because a lot of the guys I was working with were like freshmen, sophomores, and some juniors. So it was like, hey, like, we got to get some video out. We got to get some stuff going, so that way we can start getting you recruited and whatnot. So I didn't know how I was going to do that. So for my birthday, my parents got me a GoPro. And I started live streaming all of my lessons onto like YouTube.
Yeah.
So started off with that, and then that kind of transitioned into I would have a live stream, and then I would have one camera doing a pocket radar. So that way I would have that set up from behind, and then I would have the pocket radar displaying to the live stream. And I had another one doing blast motion. So that way in post, I would then have two camera angles, one with an exit velocity and another with blast motion. And then they could then also go onto the live stream and just pull that information if they wanted for themselves right away. That was like the technology that we had. That was like,
I mean,
the
that's
most
pretty elite.
That's elite. That's elite. So like do that, like pull that together by yourself. That's elite.
Yeah, and and especially like in a basement of a
Not many people do
pizza
that.
parlor. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the Shakey's and the Godfathers that I went to back in the day, like you might have had more technology in that setup than they had in the entire like restaurant, including like the stand-up Star Wars
Different things were
coin-operated
going
video
on in the
game.
basement there.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, it was different, but for me, like I just as a trainer, I've always just valued ability for feedback and like making it objective. Like I've never wanted to be the bad guy. I've never had an issue being the bad guy and being the one directing and translating the information. But like I don't want to say you suck unless I can prove to you why you suck. Like I don't want it to be subjective coming from me, because I had enough of that in my career, and I know enough others have, and it makes it to where if I can be objective and say like, hey, I think you are a great kid, but Blast Motion and Mr. Hit Tracks says that you suck as a ball player.
Sure.
I think you're a great kid,
Right.
but this stuff says otherwise about your playing ability. I will teach you how to be a better ball player. Now I'm not, the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so that made it really easy for me and being able to do that. And so like I knew immediately, like I have to get a pocket radar. I have to get blast motion. I have to have these things that can somewhat make it to where I can show these kids, hey, this is where we're starting at, but this is where we're getting to, and showing that back and forth. And I was running the business essentially by myself, and so like making sure that I had before and after of kids, like that was my biggest selling point.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that, the experience of the athlete and talking to them and word of mouth. I didn't really do a lot of like advertising, but like the big word of mouth, like, and being able to prove what I was doing worked, like that made it really easy. And so started doing a good amount of lessons and, working with a bunch of different kids, different ages, different playing levels. And so that's what made it to where essentially a lot of the facilities I have like 7 or 8 families that traveled to 4 different facilities and just like followed me.
That's awesome.
And so like, even here, my roommate is a player that I've been working with since he's in 7th grade, and he's a 2-way trainer here. And the only reason he's here is because I got this gig. And I have another guy that was going to go to Tread. Instead, once he saw that I got this gig here, he ended up coming here. I'm talking right now to like 5 or 6 of my former clients that are looking to possibly also all come out here and like hop on the Advantage plan. Like, it's like I've been able and thankful enough to work with families that have trusted in me enough, but to where like they've followed me to pretty much every place I've gone to over the last 4 years. So it's
and that's not going to happen unless you have systems where you can communicate their progress and the result, right? Like it's just not going to happen. Like, and that's the tough thing about not training with any type of like data driven feedback is not only kind of what you already hit on, which is that like, well, I'm just going to tell you that your swing sucks, and I'm going to like, this is my personal opinion of like this thing you're doing wrong. But again, the moment that you start to, even if that player is making some sort of positive progress, it's all down to my ISOTO to like to give you the pass, right? To give you like, to whatever degree the stimulus necessary to like internalize that specific movement solution because it got you that result.
Yep.
When was the first time that you used Blast, Hit Tracks, any kind of tech?
Playing wise or coaching wise?
Playing
or
wise.
both. Playing wise, I think I used a reps or a Hit Tracks. The facility that I trained at had a Hit Tracks, but I don't think I used it like maybe my senior year, and then we did like a PBR event. I think like my junior year.
Okay.
So like, comparative to these guys, forever.
Yeah, not even there.
But comparative to like you guys, like earlier in my career. Right?
Sure.
So like for me, it was like right in the middle, but it wasn't like no one really like understood it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
for
no
sure.
one like was able to see it and go, oh, that's this, this, and this. Like it was still like very new, and so it was kind of like no one really understood what they were like really looking at consistently.
Yeah.
What about coaching? Is it one of the? Did you like immediately implement the tech?
Blast
as soon as you
motion,
started coaching?
blast motion immediately. I used a little bit throughout college, and so like I knew like, hey, like bat speed, that's important. Like that's a cool thing to know. And outside of that, like I really didn't know much else, but I just knew like, hey, let's get bat speed. So I just bought like one for myself, and you're able to have 10 different bats on there.
Yep.
And so I had the locked account, so I could only look at like 4 or 5 metrics, but the 10 guys I was working with, they all had their own bat that I had like named. So that way when I would go into Blast Connect, I could sort by bat. And so then I would go through and essentially like pull their CVSs and upload it into the Google sheet. And that's how I kept them all separate. And then that's how I was able to track if they got PRs and different stuff like that.
So I'm curious, when I see you coaching in the facility a lot with our academy kids, it seems like for a lot of kids, the first thing you're talking about is just being on time.
Yeah, timing.
Timing is a huge thing. So just peel back the onion a little bit for me, like, because I know the way that I would approach it is just like, you know, if you have movement solutions that aren't getting you on time, like, what does it matter?
Exactly.
You know, but tell me, like, how is that like the first arrow in the quiver that you fire, or is it something else?
Yeah, so that's the first one I go to. In my opinion, like you could have the most beautiful swing of all time. If you're super early or you're super late, it does not matter. I've also seen guys with horrendous swings be a little bit on time and have some success. And like MLB guys I think of is like Hunter Pence.
100 pence. Yeah.
Like Hunter
Yes.
Pence, that thing is abysmal. But when you look at contact, he's at point of contact, like his barrel is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, everything is where it needs to be. And so, you know, for me, it's like timing. And that's the one thing I view that there's 3 different types of timing. And I think that's a lot of the aspect that coaches don't bring up or say. And I actually had a swing design with an athlete today that he's a high school guy. And his same idea is his coaches have always said, like, let it travel, see it deep. And I was like, has anyone ever told you how to do that? And they just kind of like looked at me like, well, no, they just say it. I'm like, I would love to be a millionaire.
Right.
If I don't know how to be a millionaire, I'm not going to be a millionaire. Like I have to figure out how to do that, and then I
Gotta have the
become
millionaire mindset, bro.
one. I just don't have it right now.
You just have to watch all the Instagram videos and then get roped into some sort of pyramid scheme, but then eventually, like, you're just gonna be a millionaire.
Yep.
That's how that works.
and then I have to get like 5 others to sign up too, right?
Yep.
Oh, sure.
10 if you want to be a millionaire.
Have you guys heard? I'll send you guys this link though. We can talk about it later.
Okay.
But the biggest thing that I noticed is that like just no one talks about it. And so in my eyes, there's the timing in which it takes you to get to your load, the timing in which it takes you to get to like foot plant, and then the timing in which it takes for your bat to enter the zone.
Yeah.
Everyone always thinks of the timing it takes for them to load. So if you talk to kids and you hear get your foot down early,
Yeah,
or
load early.
whatever it
Yep.
is, get ready early. They interpret that as I'm going to get my load and my foot down early. Well, generally, a lot of the time when we see kids get loaded up too early, they now then have to stop all of their momentum in their swing, which then when I realize, oh, I have no momentum, but now the ball is there, now I either A, have to jump, pull the shoulder, and then we see kids yanking their head, or we have to then just out of nowhere throw the hands, and now we're hitting the ball down. And so then a coach will then see, well, they're late again, or they're pulling their head. Get your foot down earlier. Quit yanking your head. And no one's talked about the real reason of what is causing all of that. We talk about what we see and what the result is, but we don't talk about what causes that. What's actually causing that is they're getting their foot down too early. They're just not getting their bat in the zone soon enough. If they could just get their bat in the zone sooner, everything else is fine. And so a lot of the time we'll see that like decision making point. So they'll get the load, they'll see the pitch, and then they don't trust that that is the pitch. Right. Then it's like, all right, I'm going to get my foot down. All right, it's still down the middle, but I just want to make sure. Hold up. Okay, it's still down the middle. Oh, now I'm late.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, well, if I just get my foot down sooner, I'll be on time. It's like, no, just go.
Yeah.
Just swing the bat. Get your bat in the zone.
Yeah.
So that is the first one that I go to. Is just like, if you're not even close to being on time, no mechanical adjustments, no thought process that I can say right now is going to fix anything.
But the funny thing is that if like the training environment just exists on a tee,
there is no timing.
There's no feedback in that environment that gives you any type of signal about where you actually are. And so I'm curious, what do you think is the interplay there between like timing and also like depth of contact? Because I'm only asking this purely selfish reasons. Because I saw my son roll over a couple balls that I think he was too early on. And I think he's too early because he still is trying to figure out what his swing is as his bat speed continues to climb. So like he's getting down so early, and it's like there's only so long I can keep these here, right? At a certain point, that top hand's going to go, and then the moment that top hand goes, please join us on a visual platform to understand this type of word salad that I'm throwing at you right now. The moment that top hand starts to kind of rotate over, now our bat path is really like significantly affected. And I was watching that this weekend through videos that my gamer of a wife was sending me when I couldn't be there.
I saw.
Shout
and
out.
like, and I'm literally watching, and I'm like, okay, I think this is what's happening. I think that's what's happening. Is it like the contact point is so far out front because he's still kind of figuring out that he can let it travel a little bit deep and still get there on time? I have no idea how to tell him that, other than, maybe have the approach to be more middle, right? To try to think more middle. But then the thing I'm worried that I'm inherently screwing up if I did say that,
Slow down the bat speed.
either that or like maybe getting there early is going to ideally result in flush contact pull side. That's kind of what we want. It's, I guess, the thing that, again, from a very, very selfish perspective, not that I run this podcast just as an opportunity to pick the brains of people smarter than me, but I'll take the opportunity if it's granted. I don't want to get him away from being able to hit the ball clean on the pull side, but I'm literally like, I think I understand the variables at play here. I'm not sure how to cue or direct him in a different way.
Yeah. So I'm a big analogy person, and like that's been the biggest thing, that I'm a very like feel analogy, which is like not necessarily what we're hoping for essentially on the floor all the time. And so I've been finding myself trying to not use as many analogies, or not talk about as much feel, and talk more about like actual quantifiable things. That way, we can look at the feedback loop. But my favorite analogy for this is that imagine that, you live 20 minutes away from school, and it takes you 20 minutes to get ready, right? So that's 20 minutes if you're going, let's say 50 miles an hour.
Sure.
So we're not going to change how long it takes us to get ready. But if all of a sudden, instead of us going 50 miles an hour and then taking 20 minutes, let's say all of a sudden we can go 70 miles an hour. It's not going to take 20 minutes anymore. We're not going to change how long it takes us to get ready for school. So we're not going to change how long it takes us to load or what the load looks like.
Yep, I follow.
But we are going to change at what point do we start getting ready.
Yeah.
Because if we don't need to get ready until a certain time, or like let's say we don't need to get ready until, let's say 7:20. Okay.
Yeah.
We start getting ready at 7:20. Now it's 7:40. Now it's time to leave.
Yeah.
But if it takes us 20 minutes if it did take us 20 minutes to get to school, now it's only taking, let's say 10. We're not going to get ready at 7:20 anymore.
Right.
We're going to start getting ready a little bit later because it doesn't take as long to get there. The swing, it's going to get us, our swing is going to get to that ball a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
The load's going to stay the same. We just don't need to leave as late or as early for school anymore. We
Yeah.
need to leave later for school.
Yeah, I feel like when I have these conversations, or I like start like in my own brain internally trying to like think my way through it, it's really difficult for me sometimes to like not get a little bit more internal about the way that I'm cueing, or the way that I'm thinking about how to cue the problem. And I am the guy who's like literally writing a book right now about how like we're largely trying to like live in this world of external cues and constraints, right? But It is, I think, a tricky thing in coaching sometimes, deciding when is the appropriate time to like use that tool a little bit, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I think the analogy thing kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I get it.
For me, the biggest thing is just perspective.
Yeah.
And like that's why I like to go to the analogy, is that everybody has a different perspective. And I try and talk to the athlete as much as possible. The more that I can know about that athlete, and the sooner that I can know how they understand things, the sooner that I can know, like, generally, and for any coaches out there, I think this is a pretty cool way to go about it. Like, I'll always ask kids right away, do you play video games? And I ask that, one, because I enjoy playing video games myself, but then two, knowing what games they play, I can then make analogies from their games,
Yeah.
because I can make that connection myself. That's going to help me make that connection for them as well. So like a while back ago, when Fortnite, like, I think it still maybe is a big thing, but like it used to be
Yeah.
like really big thing, right? There was a game mode in there where you could like drive cars. And
Yep.
when you would drive cars, the longer you would drift, the more power, the faster you would come out of that drift. And so when I'm talking to kids, I'm like, hey, the longer you load, or the longer that we can like get into this backside, the more power we're going to have going forward. And just going over and talking hitting with them, they weren't really like understanding it. The moment I start talking about Fortnite, one, their interest peaks. It's
Sure.
like, wait, we're at hitting right now, but we're talking about Fortnite? Okay. And then now they're able to like understand, because then they can visually process and understand, like, this is what he's talking about. This is what he wants me to do. Like, and then they can almost like make those connections. And so I always try and like go to that, just so that way I feel like I can make it more individualistic and make that player understand it.
Yeah.
Now, in a grand scheme of things, when you're trying to work with, 20 athletes in a 30-minute span, like, not as ideal. But
Yeah.
like in specific situations, like that's generally my go-to.
So, okay. So the time thing, I think, huge. What's the next thing that you're looking for? Like in terms of either a drill or a constraint or an intention for a kid to like help them get, let's assume that we've solved the time thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's also assume that like bat to ball contact, like flush contact is something we're trying to work on.
I would generally say just like looking at the pitches that we are swinging at, or
Yeah.
what are we offering at. If we're swinging at everything's like overhead, like maybe when we make contact, it's good contact, but how often we make good contact, if that's rocky because we're swinging at one pitch is over our head,
Yeah.
one's at our feet, then we do get that one down the middle. Like, yeah, we're going to hit that one hard, but like, what pitches are we swinging at? Because a lot of time I'll see kids will swing at a pitch, they'll get discouraged because they're like, oh, I swung and missed. Then you look at the pitch and it was over their head, and they don't realize it was over their head.
Sure.
And it's like, hey, like, and I love Hitchcock's strike zone, and I hate Hitchcock's strike zone. It's one of those.
Oh, we've
like,
talked about that.
By the way, I found a setting in Hitchcock's where you can expand the width of the plate. Yeah.
Do tell.
Yeah. How do we never know that?
So we'll be able to have a setting in there that's like tournament weekend.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, amazing.
11U tournament weekend. And then the 14U tournament weekend, it's just going to be like the size of a pea.
We don't talk about that.
Not going to talk about that.
But yeah, it's just a matter of like, what pitches are you swinging at? Are you swinging at stuff that, like, obviously it's going to change player to player. Some players, they actually can do more damage like higher in the zone, maybe struggle low strike zone. But another guy may do really well low in the zone and struggle up. Like, it might change player to player, but like having them understand what pitches am I swinging at, and is that why I'm not getting good results? Because a lot of the time, if they get failure, they immediately think it's my fault. Like, I'm the reason
100%.
that didn't work out. When actually it's like, hey, coach out there can't throw a dang strike. Don't swing at every pitch. And that's another thing that I hear a lot of coaches talk about is like, I want my, like, they'll get mad, they'll throw a pitch, and the kid will take it. And it's like, why are we taking pitches? Like, because that pitch sucked.
Yeah.
Do you want them swinging at that pitch in a game?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Shut up and throw a better pitch then. Like, or whatever it is. And they just need to understand, like, is my biggest two things. How's my timing? Am I swinging at pitches I can do damage to?
It's such a great point, man. Because like, we don't really talk about a system to like teach kids what are the balls that you can handle and you can hammer, And what are the ones that, like, absent 2 strikes in a tournament environment where they're trying to run you off the field in less than 2 hours, what are the ones you need to take? We don't really talk about that at all. We obsess about swing mechanics. I think people think that, like, guys like us who have access to technology and feedback that we can really quickly deploy, they think that all we talk about is, like, exit velocity. And, like, man, you can't discount, the effect of understanding how to teach a kid about swing decisions, but B, training an environment where you actually are forced to make that decision. So again, when we talk about tee work, like, you got to just understand the stuff that you're not getting from there. Like, I don't know. I don't have a problem if kids are swinging speed trainers on a tee, because I think largely there's still enough benefit there that it's fine. Might not be ideal. It's probably fine. And that's with me punting on the fact that, like, maybe there is some inherent, like, implicit learning that's going on when you're trying to find time and find a clean barrel with an implement that's different than your gamer. Yep. I'm pretty sure that stuff is going on in the background. Can I quantifiably prove that there's, like, that neurological process and adaptation is happening? No, but I've read enough research to suggest that that's a thing. But absent, a mini hack or a hack attack or whatever, or someone that can actually throw to you, sure, you can do your speed trainers off of a tee, but, like, all the bat speed in the world is not going to help you if you are fundamentally ill-equipped to make a good swing decision.
100%.
And then, how much is that decision motivated by competition consequence, coach judgment, situational stuff that they don't yet understand? Like, it's really hard and it's really flippin' messy, Like, it's tough teaching kids how to hit. It just is.
It is.
It really is.
But that's the fun part.
Oh, it's the best.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, it's the best, because when you see them connect the dots, it's just like there's nothing better. There's nothing better.
No.
Yeah. All right, we're fairly deep into this thing. So I'm gonna throw some flaws at you. You tell me how you want to tell me the system and how you'd want to solve it.
Oh, I love this. Let's roll.
The first one that I'm going to give you. Stepping in the old bucket.
Yeah. Are we looking at, like, if I was a coach in the, like,
sure,
training, what we would look to do? So if I've got a kid that's just, like, repeatedly, and for anyone stepping out of the bucket, like, stepping out, probably would look to go just put something behind them, like, put something behind that back foot or that front foot, and make it to where they just are able to themselves put as, like, I stepped out on that one. And, like, a big thing I would say is make sure, like, if you're throwing inside, like, they're going to want to step out even more, because they're going to be even more extremely, like, uncomfortable.
And they're trying to find space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as a coach, like, understand when you're doing these certain, like, implements or whatever, like, also understand the environment that they're in. So, like, I would definitely say, like, if I'm doing front toss or, like, pitching machine, like, I'm trying to go low and away. Like, I'm trying to get them to slightly be more comfortable not stepping out, because right now they step out because they need to try and create space.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just, like, slightly scared of the ball, and so, like, they're trying to almost, like, get away from it. And so I would just say, like, put something behind that front foot. Maybe it's like a PVC, another bat, put another tee, and just have them go through, keep throwing some low and away ones. Have them focus on trying to hit, like, away, however you can, whatever that looks like, whether it's plyos or, anything like that, and just have them just continuously hit with it, and really, really reward them on the ones that maybe they swing and miss on it, but if they didn't step out, reward the living crap out of that.
Yeah.
Reward that.
Yeah.
So that way they can get into that understanding of, they don't care if I make contact, they care if I don't step out, which if we quit stepping out or we quit stepping on the bucket, that will then make it to where we can make more contact consistently, but, like, chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
Yeah, it's so interesting to watch, like, young kids where they start to develop that move where, regardless of kind of where the handset is initially, once they start to go into the swing, they kind of, like, bring everything in and tight, but are still able to turn the barrel, and it's not just like a push.
Nope.
I'm fairly sure that the only reason that my kid has developed a little bit of that movement is because I'm, like, really bad at BP. And I've just, like, I'll non-intentionally, I'm firm on the inner third. And it got to the point where, like, I think when we were doing, like, we were hitting, like, 3 days a week in COVID, we just go down to a local park. that like that's when he figured it out, and it was just purely environmental stimulus, right? Like he knew that I was not trying to go in. Fortunately, he wasn't scared of the ball, but it was just like, okay, well, I've got to try to find a barrel on this inner third. I have to find. So what am I going to do? I didn't tell him a thing. I just provided an environment, not intentionally, not intentionally, that forced the adaptation.
Yep.
And I think something like that, like, little cones or whatever, to try to like constrain that, like that big exaggerated open move is really no different than that. Because all you're doing is just giving a little bit of feedback that like, hey, we're going to set kind of the operating range for kind of where that front foot can go direction wise. And there's a green area, and then there's like a yellow and red.
Yep.
And like making that step like literally towards the third base box is probably in the red. And man, I've seen so many kids that do that, and I'm very much motivated by they just don't want to get hit by the ball.
Yeah. Another one could also be is almost put them in that forced open position to start with, and then make them go extreme closed.
Yes.
So that way, then they understand like this is what it means. I'm a big like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You got the hot porridge, that's where you're used to. I'm gonna give you some cold porridge, and then that's how we're gonna find that perfect medium-sized porridge, that perfect temperature. So have them start open, and then have them stride to like an extreme closed. Even that could be like two different ways that you can go about that.
Okay. I'm not even sure that this is a thing, and I think it's a perfectly fair answer for you to say that it isn't a thing.
Okay.
To set the stage here, pulling the head.
I think pulling the head's a byproduct.
Right.
I think pulling the head is a byproduct of kids that are late, or kids that are just like really big and really strong, really young, and don't understand how their body works. So guys that are late, a lot of the time you'll see them, they think if I pull my head, where my eyes go, that's where my barrel will go. So if I pull my head and my head goes to the pull side, that then is going to make my barrel go there.
Sure.
Which through lots of research, we can say that's not the case.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
Not how that works.
Not exactly how that works.
And so that's like one thing that I think guys can notice will happen a lot. Or then two, a lot of time you'll have the kids that are just bigger and stronger really young. And so they get so used to where it's like, if I just get my barrel out front, that's where I'm going to have my most bat speed. I'm also going to be catching the ball with my back going up. So now I have my fastest bat speed, and I'm hitting the ball in the air. So then they get in the habit of that's all, like I get away with that because I'm bigger, I'm stronger than everybody else.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, 8th grade, 7th grade hits, freshman year rolls around. Guys know how to throw a little bit of a breaker.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, when we get that step or that head pulling and us used to catching the ball super far in front, now that's a swing and miss. Now all of a sudden I went from being the best player on my team to now being the worst player on my team. Yeah. I'm going to quit and I'm going to go play football. I'm going to go play basketball. And especially in Colorado, like that's the number one like trend I would say of like those all-star athletes when they're in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. That's generally what happens just because no one knows why they're good at that age.
Yeah.
And so all they do is they keep doing it. And then all of a sudden they get to a point where they can't keep doing it. Yeah. They don't know why they were good. So then they can't fix why they're bad.
Yeah.
And then they quit.
Yeah. That landscape change is
real quick.
It's just, we've had some parents that are like, these are future D1 athletes. And they're like 11-year-olds. It's like, man, I wish that was a conclusion I could come to with any sense of like, accuracy.
Right.
Like, but I don't know that anybody has a good enough crystal ball to like solve that, man. There's just too much variance in the signal. That's all I got.
I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
Because I've had to deal with this, and I'm not sure how you guys have dealt with this. I've actually had a high school coach ban me from working with any of his players.
Tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to help it. That guy gets he's going to get his guys better, dude. That's how that works.
There's so many layers to it, too. It's delicious. Think of like a 7-layer like birthday cake. Delicious.
Not a dip, but a birthday cake?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's one of those where like the longer it sits, the better it tastes kind of deal.
I got you.
Yeah. But how have you guys ever run into any of that, especially with Driveline being the never bunt, only hit bombs, throw gas only, like how have you guys worked and dealt with that kind of situation?
So when year one of the academy, I was here for the beginning of it, but I wasn't like involved in academy. I was back in Chicago for like 4 or 5 months during COVID. And I was helping out with the high school team. And I was asked to no longer help out because I told them to not bunt and then just tell the coach they missed the sign. And like when the entire team starts doing that, and like you figure out pretty quickly who it's coming from. So
Right.
he asked me to no longer help out with the team.
Yeah, I was asked, yes, similar. I don't want to tell the whole story. Similar outcome of the situation wasn't in high school ball because obviously my kids were that young, but definitely, got kind of castigated for how dare you tell a kid to move the bat fast.
Audacity.
And I get it, I understand it from a standpoint of if I'm a head coach and I feel like the messaging of some of the people on my staff is not in consideration with the things that I believe to be true or accurate or whatever, then that's a threat that you want to stomp out. I think the thing that's a little bit frustrating is when you kind of, I don't know what you did to try to, teach that coach. The situation that I'm thinking of, I actively tried to communicate, this isn't me. This isn't my thing. This is a thing that people way smarter than me with more high-level baseball experience than me that worked with high-level athletes than any of us, that they understand simply about the guys that are good, what they do. So if I understand that that's kind of what the guys that are good do, why wouldn't I make that a training priority in terms of like a way to scale up into that, right? And that was kind of how I approached it. Tried to give free resources, gave away a couple copies of HTKCY and bat speed programs, and it didn't work. And I think about this, kind of relative to some of the conversation we've had lately about like why there's a lot of stasis in youth baseball. For like kids that are on teams that are winning that are resistant to change. I think inherently, oftentimes in youth baseball, the signal that you get from the environment, meaning competition, if that signal doesn't suggest that there's anything wrong with what you're doing now, why would you reconsider? Why would you be forced to consider anything other than kind of like staying on the path that you're on? And it's, when I think about my own baseball experience, it was very, very meager, right? Didn't go to a D1, like was not all state, whatever. It's curious to me when you've got dads in the equation, and the overwhelming majority of us are not part of that 7% of kids that go on to play college baseball, right? It's curious to me that people that are in the other 93% end up very like strident in the way that they believe that the stuff that they were taught is so directionally accurate. And it's like, man, if we're all just people, if we're all just people, and certainly some of us have some genetic leverage that like it's hard to negotiate around, right? But if all of us are just people, and to a degree, athletic performance and development is just a reflection of like the system and stimulus that you get. If the system and the stimulus that I got did not put me in the like on this path, all state, D1, whatever, why on earth, when 20 years down the road I get a chance to coach kids, would I go, we are doing it the way that it has always been done? Why? Right? It's like if I'm a stockbroker, right? And I don't make any money for my clients. If I say to my customers, hey, like I'm just investing in the way that like my dad taught me to invest. And they go like, yeah, but like we're getting beat out by like the bond market. So figure it out. I would be forced, right? I would be forced because my portfolio produced X value year over year. And
but now you're
E-Trade does Y or whatever.
Now you're using numbers to quantify it all, though. Now you're using quantifiable things to show that you're not producing.
And even more problematic, we can raise those numbers in a period of time in youth baseball where it might not necessarily directly map to competition result. So again, like, and I understand, man, like I get it. The problem is that this is just the same, argument that I've been regurgitating since like 2018, because shit doesn't change. We know that baseball loses a disproportionate amount of kids in that transition from small field to big field. This is just like a known fact. It's 1.2 million kids every single year, more so than any other major sport. We also know around that same time that the field, the dimensions change. I don't think it's unrealistic to draw a certain amount of correlation between those two things and just go like, look, man, we are taking a moment of time where it's like really low consequence, low context for what any of these wins and losses meaning, and we are wasting opportunities to get better. We're just fucking wasting them. And then these kids get on a field and they get relegated to, fifth bat on the bench, or you're relegated to mop up duty at second base because you literally are non-viable any other position. And we wonder why that kid quits. It's like, well, man, of course. So yeah, I've dealt with that exact same thing. We haven't yet run afoul of any of kind of like the high school coaches, as far as I'm aware, of where our kids play. I know that there's one high school coach in the area who declared, very publicly on the first day of their tryouts that we're not going to do any of that Driveline shit here. And it's like, okay, man, like, okay, like, first of all, I don't have any of my kids on your program. Second of all, if you believe that your stuff works and the outcome is that you are not producing like high level athletes, then you're just being like intentionally obtuse about how good you really are. And that's a challenging thing, like, man, we want to increase the competitiveness of our teams. Yes. We're talking, about making some real significant investments in that way, and a systematized approach to how we layer in team play development. Like it's just a different thing, and that's a need that we're very acutely aware of. In the most kind of pressing question there is like, how do we balance one against the other, right? Because you don't have unlimited dosage. Right. It's a dosing question. We are making that commitment because we are receiving the signal that we're getting from the way that our team's performing in the most significant area of need. This is like the iterative process of development that is like a Driveline thing since 2009. It's like I was talking to someone at the company just last week and was like, what do you know about the Driveline Max Velo program? And he was like, I don't know, never done it. We don't do that anymore. Yeah, right. We don't, because we learned and we changed. It's it's hard to tell anybody how or what to think.
I tried the other thing. I told him he was an idiot. That didn't work either.
Sure. So. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Baseball's a really old game. I think, your point earlier that just like we just do it the way that it's always been done is very much a staple of our game, where if you suggest anything is incorrect about the way that it used to be done, it's like, now you're arguing with my religion. Yep. And I don't do that. Yeah. I don't want to have that conversation with anybody, but I end up having that conversation because that's what baseball is to a lot of people. It's just like we do it the way that it's always been done, and nobody kind of like questions, well, what did it do for me? Right? Yeah. Like what did it do for me? So it's good times. But like that's also what makes it great. Like the thing that makes our game great is also the thing that makes it infuriating, which is it's just like it's this constant search for like, what's the best system? What's the best way to think about this thing? What's the best way to agree upon like the actual North Star of what is good, and then a mechanism to like drive kids there. Someday we'll solve it.
Fingers crossed.
We will solve baseball.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Follow Conner on Twitter. It's FastRBI.
FastRBI for everything.
FastRBI for
TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, all of that.
Big Twitch guy.
Yeah.
Let's go, dude.
So it used to be, that's what kind of like got the streaming idea.
Yeah.
I used to stream like video games.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the start of, I was like, well, if I stream me playing being horrible at video games. What if I
Sure.
stream me being a decent coach? Like that'd probably be a little bit better.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit better content.
What was your game? What was your game back in the day?
Call of Duty 2K.
Big COD guy? Yeah.
Yeah, those are the go-tos.
So do we need to set up a Twitch stream with you and Goblin playing COD against each other?
I mean, we can't. I'm ass
he
now.
also-
I'm ass. Like I have. I'm like what I feel like to be an old man. I don't play anymore. I've just been doing Driveline stuff and
Yeah.
getting better on the knowledge rather than playing.
Yeah, it's that whole unlimited time thing. Like, I'd love to be as good at Halo 1 and Halo 2 as I was back in the day, but those days have passed.
No time.
Ship sailed, dude. Ship sailed.
time.
In so much as it matters, you only have so much time. You should probably make the most of the time that you have.
You have 168 hours in a week. 168 hours in a week. What do you do with that time? Know how much time it takes you to sleep. Know how much time it takes you to eat. Know the basics. That's how you can actually find a schedule to see if you have time. That's how I know I don't have time.
Sure. No, I empathize with that, especially over the course of the last several weeks / months of chaos. So that's all we got today. I have no idea what we're going to talk about next. But thank you guys as usual for all the algorithmic support, the likes, the subscribes, the notifications, all that stuff matters. The pod keeps potting. What did I say? We're well over 45,000 or something like that in total. Hugely appreciated. I am glad that you guys are as crazy as we are about this stupid thing of youth baseball.
Could I throw out my podcast too?
Of course,
Please.
dude.
So-
It's the
Hit Chat Chit Chat.
Hit Chat Chit Chat,
Me,
dude.
JP Fasone, who's another hitting instructor here, and then Connor Burns, who runs a facility up in Canada. Me and him went to college together. All us
babe.
three do it together.
Hum,
So
babe.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Get some of that smoke. Hit Chat Chit Chat.
Yes, sir.
Do all the things, like, subscribe all over the place. We'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy.